and maybe one other board member, but I'm not.
Yeah, just
Okay.
1 second.
Okay, so I think, Kirsten, good morning. We're gonna get started.
Hi, guys.
Okay, so Tim, I'm gonna hand it over to you.
Okay. Sorry. Excuse me. Okay. Okay. It'll tell us if anybody else joins, right? On your screen share.
It
Usually does.
not sure. I mean, we can see maybe in the participants thingy on the bottom. There
Oh
might
yeah,
be
when
a
it pops
flag.
up. Okay. Okay. And then before, and Nancy, I have your Prezi, will be up after this. So just to start, we want to go over, you had sent the budget request, and then had sent the memo on behalf of the board back. So just some things to talk about from the BOCC's perspective as per economic development priorities. Okay. Then going back over, so just the Board of County Commissioners' vision, mission, and core beliefs going forward. So the board's worked a lot this past year on developing a vision and mission for the county as we make more strategic changes. So then therefore they can make strategic plans for the community. Vision: Lake County as a culture and staff that is positive, professional, and committed to the community. Mission: Lake County invests in people, equipment, and infrastructure in a long-term, financially sustainable manner to provide services to Lake County residents and services. Core beliefs are strategic and adopting a philosophy of continuous improvement, operational, and creating and implementing policies with staff. The staff's involvement and accountability, and financial, making decisions based on long-term financial sustainability. Put it at the top of the mark. So anyway, just over this past year, the board and I have worked a lot on creating a financial management system for the county, which has involved creating new financial policies for the organization, and then a heavy focus on our budget development. So you can't make any good management or leadership decisions without a good budget. So I've spent a lot of time with all of my leadership team. We're going line by line through everyone's budgets on areas that can be reduced, areas that we project, might need some more investment for next year or out years. And then just having like a continuous, the continuous improvement on the budget, especially focusing on evaluation and analysis of it. Another key component is long-range plans. So the budget that you will see when the board adopts it in December will have long-range plans in there so that the community can see 24 and 25 projections for expenditures and revenues, which will help meet the board's vision and strategic plan for the community, so they can invest in their priority areas. The BOCC has identified some top values for themselves and for the organization. on innovation, accountability, sustainability, efficiency, being a progressive organization. So part of that, that's smaller, is looking at where the county's revenues come from. So see the years, so the total assessed value is where the assessor's office assesses the total value of a property. So right now we're looking at the Climax mine, then there are the mine buy proceeds and real property that make up that, that go into the total assessed value along with the personal property. So on the far right column, looking at the percent of assessed values, you can see throughout the years where Lake County government's budget comes from. So looking at 2022, 51.13% of our budget came from Climax mine. And if you look back, and so these are, in a year in arrears. So if you look back at 2021, you're kind of looking at 2020 when the shutdowns happened. So that had an impact on our budget and that's just a decline in production. It's not the mine closing, anything like that, but a decline in production and the impact that it has on revenues for the county. So that's a priority. It's an area that we need to focus on long term of understanding, half of the budget. So if the mine closes tomorrow, I lose $6 million. So that's more than just eliminating my position or the county manager's office, right? That's like heavy hard cuts to the community, what we're doing. And if you think even longer term back to the last time the mine closed, I think you can look around in the community looking at deferred maintenance, whether it's roads, the pool, other areas. The community has not recovered from that. It was very different back then because 3,000 people lost their job in one day. Now, I think there's maybe 300 or 400 people who work there. The mine's more efficient, doesn't need so much manpower. But the impact on the mine closing or operations going down will still be devastating to Lake County's, well, obviously to the economy and to the county's revenues to be able to fund priority projects, whether it's working on a deferred maintenance plan. Like, for example, Community Field, the turf at Community Field is 4 years overdue to be replaced. And that turf, the estimated cost to replace that is $850,000. We look at estimated projected costs for the Justice Center, it's $40 million. So keep these things in mind. And then looking at Lake County government's other revenue sources, right? And we're just looking at properties, but you'll see where residential comes in. And obviously that has an impact on every property owner or residential property owner in the community. But you can look at, we have vacant land is bigger than our commercial revenues. And that's an area where we'd like to discuss or have more thorough conversations with the EDC today and going forward of how do we expand that commercial base in town. In part, one tool is business retention and expansion. One tool is attracting new businesses. The other tools is, whether it's assessment of zoning areas that can be changed to incentivize commercial development, all of those things. And then, or where the county can work with other government entities in the community, Parkville and Sanitation Board, on how to incentivize bringing infrastructure to areas that can be developed and expanded.
That's a quick question.
Yeah.
Does the golf course and Ski Cooper, that kind of fall under commercial there?
They
No.
don't
Is that
pay
on this
any
list?
they don't pay any taxes.
Okay,
No.
so,
Because the county owns all the assets.
so there's some property value for you, but not,
No, it's
you
federal
can't,
land.
oh, okay.
So the federal government doesn't pay any property taxes.
So on
at the meeting.
we're looking at this too with Ski Cooper
Mhm.
and the golf course, but the golf course is on county land.
Okay.
And typically in leases, you have the leasee paying those property taxes. In our agreements that are longstanding, we don't have that, which
Right,
we're
help them
we're looking
lower
at.
their.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and Ski Cooper, the county has a special use permit with the Forest Service to operate on federal lands. And then we have further agreements that we're looking more closely at because we've been paying our liability insurance for all these years. And, there's not necessarily a return financially for the county to
Right.
continue to
Or
do that,
community.
or community. Well, yeah,
Directly.
Unless you're gonna
directly,
receive the benefits,
right. I mean,
Yeah, we
the
don't.
initial
financially.
Or community.
intent
community, yeah.
to catalyze the development of those things, fine, back in the day, maybe. Although Chris is looking at me like, no, it's never fun.
Yeah.
Why would we ever do that? But yeah, I think in today's climate, like that's something we're definitely gonna look harder at.
So like the ski lifts, the buildings, the
And there's,
heavy equipment,
yeah,
they don't pay any tax on that because they're county assets, so the county is the owner.
Yeah. And
so,
Is it a lot, by the way, the insurance? Is it?
Yeah,
For them,
our,
yeah.
our liability insurance is like $600,000 a year.
Total.
Total. Theirs is like, how much is it?
I only recall years ago it was like 16, but I think when you looked at it more recently, it was in upwards of like 60 to 70,000.
I was gonna say 80 maybe,
Yeah.
for just that.
and so part of like the revenue analysis that I've worked on with the assessor, finance department, and with the board is I kind of like, so this is one picture of it. But we have to think of like, looking at all of these leases or, gentlemen's agreements that have been done for decades and changing those things. And then we're working on an analysis right now of these revenues, but then also sales tax revenues, because we need to take into account what inflation did. So how inflation impacted these revenues and what percent change came from just inflation, right? Your business's goods and products, that price goes up, obviously sales tax goes up, so but what that breakout is.
Can I also add, for context, so Lake County is what, 382 square miles, I think?
Yeah.
A quarter, 25% of our land is privately owned. 25% of that is in the industrial mining district or zoned industrial mining that can't be developed, residential or commercial. So we really have a finite amount of land to really be strategic about. And
Really, the rest of it is
Oh.
what federal, like,
yeah, we're like
Public land.
68+% US Forest Service land, some state board land, some BLM land.
Yeah.
Yep, there's a lot of land under conservation, which is great, privately owned lands. And what you might also get to this a little later, we'll dive further into it, but just that commercial and that industrial piece, like I was super, it was pretty alarming to me actually to hear the mayor on Tuesday night say that like the airport industrial park like was never gonna happen. And also it seemed clear to me that there is a misconception or a lack of understanding of what the airport industrial park could be and is. It is not to attract like one box store. It is to do that business expansion and retention because it is the only place that we can move. Yeah, relocate businesses that are either in the downtown corridor or in other places around the city or in physical spaces that are not big enough, like those places are going out of, and relocate them in the airport industrial park, free up those parcels for other, higher and better uses, whether that's a complete redevelopment or just repurposing of what exists. I mean, I think we have a variety of those options downtown and in the city when you look at things that are along 24 and aren't necessarily all built up and are kind of a clean slate, or you have buildings, historic buildings in the downtown that just maybe need a real imaginative conversation about what could be. So I just wanted to share that and also make sure that we kind of get that understanding of what the airport industrial park, how that should be really thought about and used as a tool for BRME.
Yeah. The nice thing is we have a decade's worth of research and reports and data and all those things that we can literally pull off a shelf. I'm sure things need to be updated or changed for it, but a lot of the work has already been done, or research has been done.
And sorry, and also just something that popped in my head when we, like, I mean, these are not necessarily, this doesn't really connect with how well a business is doing necessarily, right?
Right.
I mean, if a business is doing great, you get more equipment, you build a better building, that personal property tax increases. But the direct correlation of how well businesses are doing kind of has a,
You wouldn't see that here.
yeah, it doesn't really happen. So we don't just need businesses to do better, we need more businesses.
We need a diversification. Because like commercial valuation, right? So like it's different for Climax than the Delaware, right? So like the Delaware's has like parking spots that are calculated into that commercial valuation, the building, the estimated gross income, the projected gross income, all those different things are taken into account. But like the mine has like specific standards with depreciation, industrial mining, those kinds of things, you know, like the land that Climax is on is valued at $900 an acre, so. Yeah, the land is the cheapest by far,
Right.
but it's the personal property that we get the tax.
So then board to like further talking about the board's priorities for economic development. It's just like feasibility study and opportunities, you know, to further market our community, which I think, you know, Dr. Green brought up at city council the other day of like, what is like our marketing package, like outside of tourism, that kind of stuff, but what is that marketing package for, hey, business owner who is getting priced out of the Summit market, maybe you want to relocate your business here, maybe that's feasible. That, you know, just tools that we can have for that. You know, obviously a focus on keeping our local businesses local and supporting the needs of our local business owners. You know, we have since we're the nice thing is being so close with like Salida and BV, right, with the SBDC, like we want to like see an increase in that presence of programs and resources in Lake County, so that, you know, can just better help support the business community. So in working with the EDC, you know, and the BOCC on identifying, you know, as we're having this discussion, identifying the board's priorities and where the EDC can drive those priorities forward for business development and economic development. And increase access to the COG and those other like loan or funding programs. I think, especially in the time that we're in right now, with so much money from COVID, there's an opportunity for businesses to be able to tap those funding, but you know, if they, you know, not having the support or knowledge or knowing of those things, but just how we can better engage on that front. Wanting like to fully understand like the realistic scope of the incubator activity, like what it looks like and how it benefits economic development. And then, you know, a heavy focus on language access. We've worked a lot this year with our human services department on improving language access. And all the work that they've done there will now start to push into all other county departments. We've even, you know, there'll be a proposal before the board in the budget to, you know, have a Spanish speaking, you know, like incentive, so that, you know, if you're a Spanish speaker, dependent on your level of Spanish or being able to engage with the community, maybe you get, you know, a certain percent higher pay based on how much you use your Spanish language. So ensuring that the EDC and its programming is open to all. So the economic development priorities from the board, you know, writ large, it's the economy must diversify. So again, you know, the airport industrial park, like we have the research, we have the proposals, we have proposed zoning changes, we've worked with the FAA, but like having that light industrial park or other areas. And again, you know, I was a little, you know, bummed by the mayor's comments on it of essentially, you know, it's like, apparently it's too hard, so don't do it. But I think it's worthwhile for us to drive that forward. as an area to attract new businesses or even retain and help other businesses expand. You know, helping incentivize infrastructure development and expansion, working on county commercial industrial zoning and development, but having a further deep dive in the assessment of areas that are near infrastructure that could be rezoned to CI,
Commercial industrial.
commercial industrial, or areas that are commercially zoned CI that, you know, could be encouraged for development, and how we can, you know, how the county and the EDC can incentivize that in the diversifying of the economy. You know, there needs, you know, working more, advocating for the business community with our utility providers, whether it is Excel or Vero or sanitation or Parkville. Just having that like robust business development and attraction strategy. You know, how do we get the next Melanzana here? Can we create that?
Let us know when you want, we don't want to interrupt, so.
Oh, no, if you- I mean, if you have- yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
If you-
That's-
yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, I want to comment on that, you know, about the attraction strategies and, you know, how do we create another Melanzana? I think that that's a, you know, I mean, that's the beauty of our economy on Main Street, is really that kind of maker space. And that's something that we're really leaning in on and really exploring on that. And I do want to back up too, because I don't know, are you writing notes? And
What do
then
you
go
mean by
back,
that though, Nancy?
Shouting out little things, a few things.
Maker space.
Well, you know, that's the goal number 4, the entrepreneur ecosystem, right? We're just scratching the surface on that. We don't know what the plan looks like. We're trying to get funding for that. We're, you know, going for another grant right now. We went for one and we did not get it. It was federal funding. But those are the kinds of things that can go into, is creating, you know, maker spaces, shared workspaces, things like that could come out of that. So
I think what we need, and what we've kind of deduced, is that through, you know, we did put the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and it is part of our 4-point approach. But we need someone to help us with what that capacity looks like. You know, when we did apply for the SCED grant, it was about $400,000 to the CDS congressionally earmarked funds. And it was a long shot. But we learned a lot through that process, actually, because we do, and I want to emphasize too, we've done over the last 10 months, we've worked really, really hard increasing the relationships with our partners that help us, right? There are other communities that have done similar things and had, you know, I don't want to compare, you know, community to community, but there are some DNA similarities, right? And some of the things that they do, like Chaffey County and Fremont County EDC, and their work around an accelerated program, and what industry is really appropriate for that ecosystem, right? So the Rural Technical Assistance Program, RTAP, is just getting released. And as a matter of fact, if I can move quickly and ask one of you to help us participate, we need to create a core team for this. And so I don't know if it would likely be Kayla, but the point of the RTAP grant is for them to help us create what that would look like and what's appropriate for Lake County.
So a couple things, and I'm just gonna be blunt, like, I think shared office space and maker spaces aren't making money, aren't encouraging, people need office space, but that's not creating businesses necessarily. Maker space is like this totally flaky term that's been thrown around forever. And I don't think, like, doing my research on what an incubator space actually is, because in my mind, it was never a physical space. I'm like, isn't that just this environment of access to capital and this and that?
It depends.
And I learned that, like, Chicago, for example, you know, there's a culinary, like, it's very specific, like you said, industry-wise. Mm-hmm. And for me, the first two things that came to my head for Lake County, which I hope, like, maybe you have specific things, and I hope we bring that specificity to that RTAC instead of like, hey, come help us, because I think we should know that already.
Yes,
and
agreed.
Yeah, and the cottage industry and people producing food goods at home, I think has been something that I've seen in the community for a long time. And then of course, rec tourism. And we have, like, I was really excited thinking about the cottage industry and focusing on that because we have the space, say, in the senior center, we have a commercial kitchen. And the example that I learned of all these other places are like, it's actually a very competitive process to become a part of an incubator space, which I don't think a maker space or a share, like those businesses, at least the one down on Main Street in BV and the Hornings business, like that wasn't a successful business in and of itself. And I don't think maybe the model wasn't necessarily like driven hard to promote things in the way that we might be thinking about them, but
I do want to say, Sarah,
Yeah.
I appreciate your comments. It's not necessarily directed specifically at makerspace. I think my point is that we have a unique economy here on our Main Street compared to other areas, just as far as my experience being close with other Main Street, Main Street communities. The purpose of, and the RTAP grant, the more I learn about it, and I've been excited to kind of share, because this is going to help us create what that looks like that's appropriate for us. And we do have focus areas, industry focus areas, like the cottage industry and that commercial kitchen. I mean, I was involved with the very first kitchen incubator in LA County. It's called LA Kitchen. I love the concept of that, and we did that in combination with an accelerator program, which was basically, we didn't have a space, right? It was a resource. It was an ecosystem, if you will, so that these and that's an important part of creating those pathways for our community without relying on other outside communities for our employment, right? So I think that we have a great community, and we could have and be producing a wonderful workforce if we had career pathways that led it. And we're starting that. As you know, Kayla joined us at our Future Work event, and we're just getting started, right? We've been on these efforts since January, and we're excited by it we're excited by your partnership, because we want to do what our vision is collectively, and we don't disagree at all that light industrial and that type of activity is in our future, 100%. There are some activities that we have to kind of get to first, like helping develop our own workforce and creating those pathways for our own community. And as you know, we're limited in capacity, but we want to maybe perhaps include an analysis on a potential industrial park. And just as a side note, when Marla left, none of us wanted that or planned that to happen, but we didn't get a nice, pretty package of all these things. But I do remember distinctively a conversation about the airport industry. And the direction that I got from her when she left was that it was just a non-option. It was a non-starter. I don't know why, guys. I wasn't involved. I was just kind of like, oh, okay, well, I guess I know you and I talked about it one time, and we're open to that idea, 100%.
I think
Right?
a work session around that would be
And
great,
do
so
we
we can
incorporate
just
that into
kind
our
of lay it out.
tab somehow, or maybe we use the RTAP grant for that. And we can do other things on the entrepreneurial ecosystem. There's lots of other resources and things that we can do. Do we know what that exactly looks like? No. Do we know how our neighboring partners are doing things? Yes. Do I remember when, I spent 6 years at the LADC, we did very similar things, and yeah, we can absolutely, create other resources to focus on an entrepreneurial resource focus and use the RTAP grant to help us develop with this commercial, where is it? Is the industrial park the right place for it, right? If we do attract a business, do we have the workforce to support that business? That's a really important, and so that's why we're excited about starting on these workforce development activities now, so that we can start deciding what kind of workforce we'd like.
Well,
I think it'll help identify clusters too, like Tim was saying,
Exactly.
can we have another Mountains Up? Perfect example is if we could have other outdoor, even ski industry or whatever, they're building clothing, they're making bindings or whatever, that's the perfect example of that light manufacturing that we could have up here.
Yeah.
And latch onto that cluster.
Like down in Fremont County, I'm from the ED down there at their EDC, and they created back in 2020. They kind of Chaffey County and Fremont County, they were Johnny on the spot when it came to ARPA funds. And back when the Ready Grant had like $5 million, we were sleeping behind the wheel as an organization, I'll just say it like it is. We were late to the game, it wouldn't have been if I would. We did not, and I understand it too, we were in a lot of state of transition at the time, but their programs are very different from each other. Like for example, Fremont EDC, theirs is really focused on the tech industry. So they've got PAX8, they've got a sector industry, what is it called, sector partners, which we're talking about, because we like that. We did discuss this in terms of having an industry sector focus, and we did this at the LADC as well. We're not there yet,
Well, and when you talk about like that industry or like getting another Mellons on it, it's not like, I mean, to me, I don't just go to like, hey, let's like recruit outside all the way and
I agree
bring
with that.
something here, or it's like, what exists? Like, I don't know all the history, like, why are some small industrial or manufacturing businesses from Steamboat going to the Front Range? Can we attract any of those here or promote the community
Yeah.
for that move to Light County? Like, what about Lifetime and those relationships and that network might we want to pursue and figure out, like, to harness, like, all of the other things that support that being attractive.
So
And
I think you heard me say on Tuesday that, attraction projects are like, was what we got most credit for. That was what made the most impact on your, on the bottom line, right? On the county's bottom line. But that's a really tricky concept here. We have inherent issues, obviously. I don't have to state them. I mean, can't attract someone without being where for them to live. So, and we know that, until a little bit of some of that gap is addressed, and you guys, I have to commend everybody. I know it was hard getting that regional housing authority started and going, you guys, like that's a game changer for us, for our ability to do our job, right? So I did, yeah. What else I was gonna say about that?
Well, I'll just
Sorry
jump in
about that.
another thought on like recruitment too, and I know we were talking about the incubator entrepreneurial ecosystem,
yeah.
but that, like, part of that is why we had on the other list, like, get that SBDC resources here. And I know that, that's not a finger pointing at you, this is just an inherent problem of the proximity we are with our regional
I would like
resources.
to talk about that a little bit. So just so you know, we have a very close relationship with our SBDC. We have regularly scheduled meetings, we're regularly marketing their programs and trainings because we're not gonna step on their toes. Why would we create a training?
Right.
Really, that's not the EDC's role, okay? That is their role, and that's why we partner with SBDCs, so that they can do that for us, so that we don't have to. The other comment is, they're, and they provide a lot of great resources that, that we can lean in and, glean from, if you will. But where we're kind of missing a resource is our COG. And really, they're really designed to be that business, whatever we can't do, right? And really, it should be around, right, access to capital. That's the bottom line. If you look at Northwest COG's activity, that's what a COG is supposed to be doing. Our COG is not doing that. So,
yeah.
and I know
No,
that, and I know
agreed.
that SCED,
We
just
know
so you know, I do sit on the SCED board. I'm a board member of SCED, and they are actually, so they got a grant. There's money going around to the COGs right now because of this lack of access to capital, right? I've been barking up trees for 10 months about this. And finally, there is SCED is going to work with our COG to help all of us roll something meaningful out so that our businesses do have access to capital for expansion, because that's a big barrier for us here. There's one business that needed like 20 grand after investing her life savings into her business, and needed like 20 grand for a piece of equipment. Could she probably have pulled the money out of her equity of her house or this or that? Probably, but we needed a year. And we did the analysis on when that equipment could get paid off, and no bank here would loan her that $20,000. So back home, we leaned in heavily on our SBDC partners. We didn't have COGs, we had other, but similar, right? Different but similar, that we leaned in on. And unfortunately, I remember starting with Marla going, this is a missing tool in our toolbox. So I feel like there's hope on the horizon when it comes to the ability for them to provide that necessary resource for us.
Well, and also, I mean, while our cog is working to catch up, John Stabney from the Northwest cog, I mean, he has said this over the years, but we need to also work with him. We need to be shameless and going.
I'm happy with
because
that,
he's like,
John.
we can totally work with you, and if it's
Just
just a
come to
matter
meetings,
of
right?
We do.
subscribing and
Just so you know.
contributing and in excess of
Yeah.
whatnot, but they have the resources available
doing it.
already.
Yeah.
We went to his event, I email him regularly.
Yeah,
I'm the one, I read his emails, I get stuff out of his emails.
yeah,
I don't have the capacity to create all of that research, that's why we rely on our partners. That's what the
Right.
EDC did back home, that's what our roles are.
yeah.
Right.
We all need to be better about actually accessing those values.
I think we're doing a better job, you know, I think that we moved the needle a little bit on that as a community.
We talked about trying to switch, you know.
Oh, God, many
go through-
times.
Go
Well,
through
yeah, and-
this process. and-
But
I
again,
talked to
yeah,
Julie
like we don't
Gillespie
have to
myself.
switch to access the resources, is basically what I
Yeah.
think has been like offered to us
Okay.
from,
But if we do another, or we, you know, we can have a discussion here, but if there's, you know, another work session on the airport park or just like EDC, I think for me, it's understanding like what we have locally, like, you know, we have 2 libraries in town. People can go for free knowledge, like if it's, you know, having classes there or things like that. And we have a lot of youth engagement at the county, whether it's between Goal, our rec, library. I mean, I have interns in every single one of my offices. So how, you know, they're learning what a professional organization is like, but how to like further encourage them, you know, to learn, to grow, to be interested in being an entrepreneur, like those kind of things. I think we have, at least from my perspective, it seems like we have a lot of low-hanging fruit that we can do.
That's why the future of work has been created, not just in our community. Chaffey County, Fremont County's rolling it out. We were the number 2 to roll this future of work concept out. Just so to your point, 100% agree, right? Luckily, we have a really great head of CMC, and he got a co-action grant to help fund this effort. The problem with, and I went through this in the last round with community colleges, the challenge with these types of programs is that there's not someone organizing it all for all of us. It's that missing umbrella, you know, level of assistance. Well, the states filled the gap and they created that position. So it is about our kids experiencing that kind of work-based learning concept. And, you know, one thing people talk about quality of life and whatnot. You know, quality of life is directly related to access to a quality job. And without access to a quality job, you know, it's gonna be pretty difficult. And I use the word quality for a reason. Anybody, you know, access to a job is probably not that difficult. You know, but access to a quality job, I think, is something that we all need to lean in on. And Kayla unfortunately missed my job quality presentation yesterday,
I did, I'm sorry.
which I'm gonna practice on you if that's okay,
Yeah,
because
that's
I'm actually certified. They're actually considering certifying businesses so that they understand what a quality job means, not just a job, not just a paycheck, but what else are you doing? What else can you do? Can it be specific to each employee, right? Can there be other non-financial benefits that you could provide? I mean, there's tons of things. So quality job means where people feel valued and they feel like they're in this position and they feel valued. That is a direct, and you can't feel valued if you don't have access to the ecosystem, that supportive ecosystem in your job. So,
yeah, I think, I mean, I have that in my notes from like our past conversations too, from my experience in knowing, you know, you have, I mean, I know like 30 business owners downtown, like personally, like there are, most of them that have been doing this for a long time have quality employees and people that are dedicated, but some of them that I also know like have some revolving door or it's like, why can't we plug people in? Well, there's just not necessarily the environment in that business, and you can tell that even on the surface level
Right,
of like, why do I wanna
Culture.
drop everything that I've been doing for the last 8 years in my place of employment over the hill to jump into this business that isn't necessarily driving.
So,
So there's
Like-
some employer training too that needs
so
to happen, yeah.
that is a lot of what the future work is about too, is the employers taking responsibility for creating opportunity, creating space for opportunity, and not just a job. And I hear you, we have listened, to our community and the business needs, and we are creating a campaign, and it's really a social impact campaign, really, that's what it is, and, well, up here in economic development, it's okay, it's a cone we're doing from. Because there's specific areas that cover that kind of stuff, but we know that access to a quality job in Mud changes lives, period. I've heard it from a couple, two personal incidences that I've had conversations with that said, yes, our marriage completely changed. He can pick up the kids. I can go to lunch with a girlfriend. I can go to yoga now. So we're leaning in on that social benefit of considering maybe you have to take a $1 pay cut. But in the meantime, while we're developing those kind of strategies in conjunction with our partners like Christy Galarza, like marketing professionals to help us control the narrative around what that is. And it's not just about your financial gain, it's about how do you monetize a quality of life makeover? I know I experienced it. I don't have to commute to my job. I drove an hour and a half one way for 25 years. It has changed my world. I'm a different person in every way. And we really want to tell that story. So we're
Yeah.
working really hard on that. In the
Highway
meantime,
91 was closed this morning, you know,
in the
and there was a
meantime,
fatal accident.
we're
on
going
I-70.
back-
I mean,
yes, and
it's
in the
a rough
meantime,
deal.
but
going back to,
the thing about that is you have to have the industry here to bring
True,
those
yeah,
jobs
we got-
back,
we're
right?
gonna
Like
need-
the number
we're
one
gonna need some
industry
jobs.
that commutes is hospitality.
Right,
We
exactly,
don't
Yeah,
have hospitality here, right? We
yeah,
can't
Right.
expect people to leave their jobs at the Hampton
Yeah.
Inn in Silverthorne and come here when there's not an industry to replace that here.
Right, I think that might be a little bit more, I don't wanna say,
And the small businesses on
Important,
Main
yeah.
Street are not going to replace the commercial valuation of Climax.
you
Right.
could get to a hotel probably before you can get to the industrial park too, so I think it's.
Well, and I guess-
that maybe could move further up the list.
yeah, like to be
Yeah.
nuanced and real, it's like, that is great and that is super important, we completely agree. And I'm not saying you're spending 80, do I want you to spend 80% of your time on that necessarily right now? Probably. Because I think we do need to do that like attraction of let's get hospitality, what's the lodging feasibility study look like? Where does that play in? And then all those land strategic puzzle pieces moving with commercial industrial, the area that we think we're gonna zone commercial industrial,
Right.
airport industrial, commercial industrial. Like those are, I think that's because then you
That's
are
a
also
huge-
communicating the vision of
Mhm.
what could be and where it's going, not just like what is here and why people should change,
Well,
because
I
that's not necessarily like,
And I don't know that the commuting thing will ever actually stop, right?
sure,
Because
no,
there is so much different
No,
industry, right?
no,
So like
yeah.
that's never going to stop. But we do know that the bulk of that is hospitality and we can address that. And if we do address that, what does that mean for us, right? It means more economic activity because you have a hotel here and you can have a conference here, right? So there's other pieces and puzzles in that, but there's just not a diversification in the industry either, right? So we have to figure that out to be sustainable as well.
I have a question, where are you guys at with, or I know that, with Adam and I work really closely together, but by the way, what a great asset, we
Yeah.
needed that, so that we can work together. And we've had conversations about the Marriott, coming phase 2, and I know that I've heard
I
lots of
don't
things.
even know what is happening.
Yeah, we.
I'm
Sorry, I
Yeah.
should have.
Oh,
I didn't want to distract you like that. While Tim was talking.
Well,
It's,
dang it. You can
and
read it now or
can I back up
afterwards.
to the hospitality feasibility, whatever we had it called there, which I think is a fantastic idea. So who does that? Who heads that up? Is that like us and
You.
tourism panel that do that together, or like how?
It
How
should
do we
come
make
from the
that-
EDC.
I don't think that
right?
tourism, I mean, I think just because of Adam's personal background, he understands that, but I would not assign that
To him.
to him unless he can actually really be helpful.
Okay.
So just
I
so you
don't know
know,
if it would be, I don't know if it would be appropriate for us to do it. I
No,
think it
no,
would really be with
yeah,
you
I
guys,
just-
right?
I have no idea.
so just so you know, we, did I forward you guys
Yes,
that
it was
hotel?
good, it was
Was
good,
it
I
us?
read it from Lions, was it Lions?
Yeah, it was Lions.
Yeah.
And then FEDC, they did a little something, and, you know, we can pull the trigger on that at any moment. We pulled back, on that this year. We can put it into our plan for next year.
Mhm.
Not a problem. We have earmarked funds for it and everything. It's really important.
Yeah.
The reason why we pulled back a little bit is, because of the activity with Marriott.
So
We,
what is that?
so from what
Is
I.
it worth us understanding what's that?
No.
I
The
don't,
Marriott
it's
stuff?
not worth us understanding what's
The
happening?
Marriott,
Oh, okay,
why?
then never mind.
I mean, it's in rail yard phase 2,
Why is that?
whenever Nager gets his stuff together. I don't think that everything, the meeting that was held a couple weeks ago or not, was not, it was not a good use of Ann's time, or her staff's time, because it's not, to me, that's
It's a
like,
problem with the developer, it's not a problem with the actual
So is it dead
industry.
then? Are we not doing that?
well, I
Yeah,
don't
what
know,
is
but
that?
it's not, that's, one, it's up to the city, and, two, it's, where that development is in it, and if those hotel people are serious or not.
Okay, so, again, this conversations prior to my time, I wasn't in charge, but when I did kind of come in and kind of dig around and go, hey, how come we're not doing a hotel this business? And that was before Adam started.
Yeah.
And so I did meet with, the Marriott people, if you will. Not like one-on-one, but as a part of a group, Zoom, and it sounded like that was already done. The approvals have already been made at that corporate level for the Marriott. Now it's just a matter of, and then I did hear, Anne, and I do understand, the inherent challenges of the rail yard. So I get that, but I feel like it is in our future. As far as they're concerned, it's already approved, and it's not a maybe. They've already said, yes, we're gonna do it. So I think it's just a matter of getting John, where he needs to be in that first phase, I guess.
Back in, that Marla had and.
Oh, yeah.
I bet we could get Climax to pay for part of this, the feasibility study too.
Maybe, they might be a good partner for that.
Yeah, I would.
Yeah. Because then, so then we can we'll shift a little bit into like the community development priorities, having, with the EDC, having a better understanding of the BOCC's vision and strategic direction for the county and integrating that into EDC's work. So these are just broad areas of priority from the board, right? So we focus on sustainability and natural resource management, healthy communities, human services, education and childcare, and housing. So, community development is tangential, at least in my mind, to economic development, but areas where the EDC can complement, help, drive forward these priorities. If looking at human services, right? We have a persistent poverty rate in this community of, it's like 13%. How do we break that? How do we break generational poverty in this community? I've done things, with the board's approval at the county of, the base salary at the county is $40,000 a year. We did the mid-year COLAs. We've changed our culture at the county so that we are a place where people do want to work. It's not, and it's a good place. We have a 9% retirement match. We have a great benefits package in the community, where I can't compete on wages, but we can compete in other areas. So whether it's the future of work, those kind of things. And I've also come to terms as an employer, I'm not going to have the majority of my staff who was born and raised here and who has worked for the county for 20 years. I might have one or two going forward, but that's not it. So I've had many conversations with Ben about that of, I'm fine with a cycle of like 2 to 5 years of people churning in and out as I get my house in order and structure and policies and procedures in place and doing that. But that's like a key, area for our community of having such a stubbornly high poverty rate, that needs to be broken.
13%, you said?
I think
Yeah, it
that's
is,
13%.
I will say, last year, I wasn't a part of the presentation, but I do remember that Marla came in with a definition difference between community development and economic development. They are very, they are connected, right? But they are very different strategies. The economic development entities, really, we try to stay focused on access to quality jobs in every single way and whatever that looks like. However, in our community, there is a fair amount of more overlap there. And we agree. And, in regards to human services and healthy communities, again, I just go back to access to a quality job. We have to continue these efforts. And I know, Jason and I are pretty realistic and we're transparent. We understand that the EDC has been through so much transition.
Yes.
And we know that. And we worked very hard over the last 10 months kind of going, wait a minute, we have to demonstrate impact. How do we do that in a way that we need to? Any EDC I've ever been involved with and any other nonprofit, we do all of those things. So we're getting better and evolving in that way. And we just scratched the surface here. We're excited about it because access to a quality job also means engaging and creating opportunities for our kids. So that 80% of them don't do what their mom did and their dad did and they worked in the hotel or they were in construction. Let's bring that back home. And it's a multi-pronged approach. There's not a silver bullet when it comes to this. There are several efforts that have to take place. And we think, gosh, we have an increased capacity as a community now. Because I don't know about you, Sarah, but like a year ago, I don't know that we could have done anything like future work. And that's where that tie-in between community development and economic development happens, is when we can empower our own kids. We can create pathways for our own community so that we can create an independent workforce, an independence of workforce, so that we're not, and we have a challenge that a lot of communities don't have that's actually to our benefit. And that's the majority of our workforce goes somewhere else. My friend at Fremont, 90% of her workforce drives in. So we do have low-hanging fruit. We do have areas that we can focus on, and the EDC has done that this year.
I also think too with the community development piece, there's, as Jason from Better City pointed out too, we have like a really high number of nonprofits and non-government organizations here in Lake County per capita. So I think maybe leaning on them a bit, or maybe there's some way that we all need to come together and, have that once a year powwow or something and figure out, who can work on certain things. And I think there's a lot of really good nonprofits right now, like really strong, healthy organizations that could do some of this.
And that are doing work in that area.
Yeah, and I think they are, and that's, yeah.
We absolutely support all of those, areas in terms of like community development. That's, that all happens when people have a livelihood and a sustainable livelihood. Resource management, I know that, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but I know the EDC, only because I just digging some past notes, but I know that they spent a fair amount of time over the years trying to focus on providing better internet infrastructure to the community, because without that, and I think it's another reason why the EDC had some barriers around expansion, business expansion, because we didn't have the proper infrastructure for some of those, like PAX8. I'll give a good, do you guys know who PAX8 is? They're it's over my head, okay, this is going on that industry, but they provide, it's a tech company, and they have a presence down in the southern, area, Fremont EDC, they have an office down there. And then basically they provide like Microsoft high-end Java, that sorry, it's terrible. But they came up here and met with Marla and I, And we wanted to, you know, as we were kind of going through, what is that entrepreneurial ecosystem? What are the industries that we could really focus in on? And we're just, the skill set of our workforce does not match the jobs that PAC-8's hiring for. They're looking for Java developers and, you know, people with that technical area of expertise. So that's why it's so important that this RTAP grant that we do to kind of, you know, explore what are those industries that are realistic based on our workforce.
Based on the, right, and it's me,
Yes.
it's, I don't know, this is not necessarily gonna be clear or articulate, but like, as you're talking through some of these things, and I think this is I'm confused as to, I feel like we keep getting off of like the EDC's function and or core competencies, and like, could, like you said, the employee and workforce building, don't know that that's an EDC function, or rather an EDC function to talk to like other nonprofit groups to like get them to focus on it too. And CMC, I mean, it's like, I know CMC, Tim and Ben have been talking about that and the dual enrollment and all that. But I just feel like there's like, I don't know, you get into all these things and I feel like mission creep or something, but then I'm like, wait, how do we just like focus that with the bandwidth and the capacity of the EDC currently and all those things, so.
Well, mission creep, I don't think workforce development activities, I mean, that's fully within the scope of an EDC. Particularly in our community, when our educators are creating important career pathway areas now that never existed before. So it's hard to create a workforce if there's no plan on what areas those kids could be interested in. That's why an apprenticeship program and an internship, and where the EDC's role in that is that we're here to engage the business community so they have realistic expectations, right? That's going back to quality job and culture, right? So not every employer in Lake County is the right fit for this, for all the reasons you talked about, right? So
For the program?
yeah, but culture can be contagious. Positive culture can be contagious. You can affect it. It takes time. But I think that it's important for our employers and the current jobs that we have right now, and having the employers look, what does my workforce look like? Like Taco Bell was there, and Climax, and Cutting Edge, and others that are really looking ahead and it very well, they want it to be our own community. I mean, they want that. I think that was the biggest takeaway from yesterday was so I hope that, that makes sense in terms of, the connectivity between what we're, what we're.
It does, yeah, and
doing.
I can't, like, I think it just gets very nuanced of like the role in that effort or that concept.
Well, and thanks for saying that, Sarah, because I mean, that put a fine point on it for me is like, I'm having a hard time sort of figuring out or understanding, and this isn't like a criticism, this is just like, so we have the EDC and we have Adam and the tourism panel and we have CMC and we have the nonprofit groups you mentioned, and I don't quite understand sort of who, or I don't have like a framework in my own brain of like, who, when you list that, all those different entities, including EDC, who is the lead on some of these things we've been talking about for the, for this session, who's a partner in them, who isn't involved, and for any of those, like, who, some of those maybe have the current capacity, some of them could do it with a quick grant, some of them like, it could be their role to lead it, but they just, they would need to hire a staff person or, really, it's more significant contract. So anyway, I think to me, like really trying to get straight of, of all those different, and then we also have the Chamber of Commerce and we have the Main Street program, which is sort of housed under the EDC, but sort of different, or it has a narrower mission. So just understanding, what all those organizations' sort of interests and capacities are, again, like who can lead on some of these things and who needs to be a partner on some of them. So I don't know if that was like, that's.
That adds to that,
Yeah.
It's a tough one.
And, you know,
Yeah.
It is hard, but I think we need to get that
asset mapping, I
straight.
think.
And also, and there are things the county can do, like, you know, one of the bullets back in here was like, you know, outside of this, you know, the city has a role and the county has a role in making sure that like our zoning, you know, and things that we either own land on or can put money into structure in place. I mean, there's some things that we have direct control over that we should be, or, you know, just like legally have to be the lead in. And again, like, we've had some very initial discussions about trying to, you know, revisit, are there some areas that are, you know, that are county land that we currently, you know, that we could be rezoning because they're on or near existing infrastructure,
that'd be
but
great.
they're not zoned right, you know, so,
Which
and
could
So
be
back
relevant.
home,
that's a bit of a ramble, so,
Yeah.
but I think, you know, adding to that list, I think the county and city are also on there of understanding what we should be doing and making sure we have, you know, staff assigned to, that's all aligned, but right now, it just feels, and it's probably like largely like my own not paying enough attention, but I don't know like who's really like the lead on what.
Okay, well, just so you know, EDCs, we're a private, quasi-governmental, community benefit nonprofit. Counties all over the country, they can't do it internally for their own protocols, right?
Yeah.
They cannot, they have to create a 501c3 or a C6 in their case, to do that for them on their behalf. And the cities then contribute not as much as the county, because the county's program basically, it's a department essentially of what you do. And it's unfortunate that those kind of, those parameters aren't clear in terms of what our role is in the county. And we want to change that, and we hope that we've moved the needle a little bit on that this year, but want to do a better job, always keeping our lines of communication open so that we can focus, and be that kind of your department essentially for you. Pay us to do that. That's not unusual. And our specific role, our mission is to attract and retain jobs in everything that means. Assisting businesses, providing on-the-ground technical assistance, also providing strategic activities like planning for a future mine closure and things of that nature. So,
Well, to that point, we have a confusion too, and I had a question, like, what, can you remind me what the Main Street total budget is?
Yeah, it's 45,000, 50,000.
The total budget?
For Main Street?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's about that. It's not a lot, guys. I mean, the city
So
gives
you
us.
asked the city for
Comes from-
50,000 for Main Street
Mhm.
to cover a portion of the Main Street operations.
yeah.
So what's the total budget?
I don't think we're on Main Street.
Okay,
Yeah,
because
the rest-
I mean, this is like not, this is a hard, and we have been looking at this for our own staff capacity and delivery of services and bandwidth and adding position. Like, I appreciate Main Street, I love Main Street. I actually don't want any of the county dollars to go to the EDC to support Main Street. I want the county's dollars to go to the EDC to
100%.
support all these other things, and I was very confused
Right.
on Tuesday night as to what the total budget of the Main Street was versus what you were asking. Like, in my mind, the city should be covering all of that.
Yep.
Yeah.
All of that, and I
Yes.
don't
They
want
are.
you, I know that was absorbed and like, people are crossing that, but I think to protect your time.
Yeah.
I don't want any of your time to be spent on the street.
I understand, but
I
I do wanna say something, and I'm glad you brought that up, okay? We know that, and we knew that this was transition, right? So we didn't know how it was all gonna work out. I didn't know I was gonna be sitting here talking to you today. So, yeah, there was a lot of, if it was confusing to understand, try doing the budget. So the EDC decided that I'm not going, am I still supervising the program? Yes, I'm I'm training and doing work-based learning for our internal staff. So I spend very little time on Main Street. Yes, I'm at the events, but in terms of day-to-day management, I have literally delegated almost everything. The only things that I do for Main Street is to make sure that our state partners are happy, and I do those reports. I'm not gonna give that to an admin there, that I will do. That's really the only thing I'm doing, but I do wanna touch on this a little bit. Are you there when Marla brought in Ed McMahon, Sarah?
I don't think so.
I think you were there.
So Ed
Yeah.
McMahon is not the guy from the clearinghouse. He's actually a well-respected economist. Our chief economist at the LADC worked really closely with this guy. He's great, right? And he brings a realistic view on where the economic drivers are in a community, and it's right on Main Street here. It's all right here. The amount of work, the crossover, and the reason why, being a Main Street community is important and why it's important to our work, it's directly tied into our mission as well. So we have a unique nuance to our economic development here, different than other areas, and that's called historic preservation. So historic preservation is a big piece of,
I appreciate
Our
that. I
economy.
just don't necessarily think that's interwoven in our to-do list.
to assist businesses on Main Street to
In-
thrive.
No, I
That's kind
think,
of what we
I
do.
think that's good. I
Yeah.
think that's a fraction though, but today, we need that logic feasibility. We need that puzzle, we need that plan, and we have talked to Better City about maybe doing that for us on that, like, we need everybody to understand the importance of the puzzle pieces moving in those parcels and all of that. So that then you all can also be working on like getting that list of local business. I know existed at one point between Nicole and Mike of people that would move. I mean, I think Mike had 7 businesses that would move to the industrial park. Like, we need to kind of queue that up the same way we need to queue up eligible homeowners.
It's hard for people to think of
Housing
an
authority and our,
It's hard for businesses to think about expansion when they can't even staff up with what they currently have to do. So it's hard to get them past that, but I don't disagree. I mean, it's called our pipeline in the EDC world. I mean, that was, yeah. I have several businesses that I've talked to that could easily, that would consider something like that, an expansion, if we had something of that nature.
well, but, and I'm not talking about most businesses downtown. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think that would apply to most businesses
Well,
downtown. There's,
Well, yeah, there's a reason why you're downtown, obviously.
Yeah.
Some of them can't
absolutely,
detach from that.
right.
But that's where we need to have attraction to supplement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
So
but-
like, those are two different things, right? Like retention and expansion of a small business is different than attraction of something that's light industrial, that's going to move the needle on some of these other things, right? And I think about other pieces of sustainability, right? Like past the commute or whatever.
Mhm.
Like, okay, we don't want people to commute for work, okay? But like, there's also one store that you can buy a pack of diapers in, and 90% of the time they're out of the size that you need. So you have to go to Summit County anyway. So what is the plan for like supplementing the industry for people to actually live here and survive here,
Yeah, I mean,
right?
that's
Because like, it's great if we have all these downtown businesses, right?
Yeah.
But it's
Right.
not gonna
But you
put
need
clothes
this-
on my kids' backs.
Yeah, and we don't need another boutique-y retail store.
totally agree.
For crying out loud.
But I mean, those are the things.
That's part of that work
considering.
session is to really dig into that, because what do you want to attract, Are we,
Yeah.
do we want to attract manufacturing, warehouse jobs? Is there an anchor store, because you're gonna need something like that, like a lumber yard would be perfect for your anchor, and then building it off of that to what else could be there, but, yeah, I mean, essentially you need to create a secondary business district, which is, it's gonna be a long-term, deal.
That, the whole conversation then is a perfect segue to the last slide of just like understanding the EDC's operational structure and the board's input. So as the largest funder, are the BOCC's input priorities being met or respected? Then is the operational structure benefiting the community with such a large board, the 18 people on it? And can the EDC's operational structure change to meet the priorities of the BOCC?
Yeah, and as president, I can address that a little bit. So, we've tried over and over. We talked about committees and how do we step up? How do we get more people, volunteers to be more involved? And I think, we're moving that direction as we develop some more programming and stuff like that. We do have the business retention expansion. We finally got a few board members to participate in that, which is great, versus like 0. We tried with Marla too, it's the same thing. When she first came on, we were gonna get committees around each goal, we're gonna have a committee, and then, it never took off. But as far as the board size too, what I want you guys to understand is that we have 8 donor members. The bylaws state that they cannot have a majority on the board. So the minimum size of our board is 16. And that means we're equal, right? So we want to give the elected board members the majority. So that would be a minimum of 17. So we're at 18. So, I don't see that, as being a problem, but we can't figure out how to get people
Well,
to
could
be
we-
more involved. I
Then
mean,
Is there a
it's-
way
they're
to-
volunteers and we
But I
can't.
think is there
seem
is
to
there a
get-
way maybe that, and I don't know, maybe we need to have this conversation as the executive committee
Yeah, I
and
think
take this
it'd be a
feedback
great-
from here today, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Can we rewrite the bylaws so that we have a
I
more
think we need to have
functioning
that-
We need to have
board?
that
That's a
Because
conversation
it's,
we'd like
Yeah,
to
you
have.
can't function with an 18
Yeah.
member board. You, no one in your
Yeah.
position, that's like
no, you should not
so
have to deal with
unwieldy.
that.
so I just
Well,
wanna,
what I'm saying, you can't reduce it down to 16. If we get another donor member, that means we need another board member.
But we
So-
can always change the
so we're-
bylaws.
You know what I mean?
But I thought
The
that,
size of the
I
board
thought
is
that
dictated
each,
by,
I thought that each donor member got like more votes than other people.
for certain elections, yeah, they
the
have to,
elected
yeah.
officials.
Yeah, they get graduated and now it's based on the nominated.
Like we get 5 votes.
Yep,
on-
But we can rearrange the bylaws
Yes.
too,
Yeah, we need to do
to
some
select-
amendment of that, yes.
I wanna address something.
Sure.
I have reported to a nonprofit board.
Yeah.
And it is
A
really.
constant joy.
You took the
I
words
will
right out of
say,
your mouth.
we appreciate your grace right now, because if you look at the Main Street Board, I'm just using board organizational structure participation. That was on the ground, that was non-existent. And it is building, it's called building a team, that takes time, you know that. You need to be in your role for a year to build a team. I've been in the Main Street role for 18 months, and I have a beautiful team. It's fully, we're getting all the attention in all of our partners. Main Street, yay! I
And
need
then you
another
do fun
year.
stuff like music and.
I need a
Auctions.
year to, there are certain board members that need to cycle off, and they will be. We're gonna be making there's some board changes that will happen. But besides the whole, and personally, in the bylaws, that's unheard of in all of my years. At EDC, that would have never flown. That needs to change.
So the donor member.
The
and-
donor member voting thing, that whole thing, I don't know of any other EDC that does it like that, and I'm friends with a lot of them. So, that definitely needs to be changed, but I do wanna say something, I know that it seems like a big board. I know that it seems like a big board, and it's pretty sizable,
Mhm.
it's pretty sizable, but it's not that far out there when you think of wanting to, engage certain sections of our board to focus on a goal, right? We couldn't do that before, because we didn't have enough people on it. That's why, that's another reason why Main Street, we need to get to that level on our Main Street board, but we only have 6, 7 board members. I don't have enough board members to be heading up committees.
Well, and in my, sorry, go ahead,
No,
Jeff.
go, oh.
Well, but I think there's, and I totally hear your point about needing to, engage in some way, get their input, have them, tackle, like you were saying, like some subcommittees if they have the time. But I think there just needs to be whether it's an executive committee or, some more manageable set of folks who have time, maybe because they're professionally paid to be there, to be able to make more efficient.
We're
That's
curating that right now.
That's a great point, and we are
Yes.
very mindful of that right now. But I did want to say too is, a couple years ago, our board voted to go to quarterly board meetings, and I think it ended up really hurting us. And so our board did vote to go back to bi-monthly, so next
Okay.
year we are at least going bi-monthly, so I think,
That'll be helpful.
that, and we're gonna try to do some networking things and build relationships and stuff within the board, so, next year, that's definitely.
Yeah.
We inherited,
They-
we inherited a board at a really weird time,
Sure.
in terms of transition. We lost our VP. We had a brand new, executive committee member, which, by the way, you don't ever appoint executive committee members on a board that they've never sat on. That's unheard of. So we've had to
There's
work
there's no
through.
prerequisite to that, like you don't have to be on the board for 6 months before you
Yeah,
can be
so
on
that was
exec. You can be on
tough.
exec right away.
And you guys know the inherent challenges. I mean, Kayla and we've had pretty transparent conversations, but you know what? In spite of that, we just keep going one step in front of the other and push out programming that's directly related to these things that you guys want us to focus on, and that's all around quality job creation and retention and attraction. And attraction is, something I think about and work on every day, talking to people about opportunities here. Right now, as
And
you
I
know, the
think that's
market
about
slowed
kind of
down.
what I said at the city, it's like about, we need to take that step back and go, what are we missing? What are the things that are making us not attractive? So that we can get
Is it
to
incentives? Is it?
being attractive.
Well, I don't know that that's the EDC's job, because I think there are, like, if you look at that list that I gave you of the synthesized list, the one pager, that's all those things are in the 4-page list that I gave you. But like, I think in my experience, and I think all of us, like, maybe the participation is lacking because there's not specificity on like what to do exactly, and or that like big broad like workforce like
You
what
said
is that? I
vision,
don't
you
know how
said
to do
vision
that.
earlier. What exactly
It
is the
needs to
vision?
get,
Yeah.
well, I think we have the vision. I think where I've been like experienced that lack of direction, like I think things need to be more specific. And also, as you were talking, Nancy, I'm like, okay, well, maybe Main Street is Main Street is specific, both physically and conceptually. And maybe that's why that is like so easy to
Quantify. sort
go
of, yeah.
to and to
right.
keep doing that and focusing on. But let's try to wrap our heads around these specific things under business development, economic development, community development, and then the structure, so that then you get maybe your board member saying, I can do that. I have networks here. I know this. I can like
That is
really dig into SBDC and get their asses in our community and like
They're in our.
organize some.
They are, and they really tried.
Sorry, I don't mean to
They
pick
really
on
tried back in like
SBDC.
2019, 2020, because I was on the events committee at the EDC, and so we had Jamie coming to every meeting, and
Yeah.
like, we were really trying, and they were willing to cater programming to Lake County, so if there was, QuickBooks 101, it was a need, they would put that together and do that, and we had really low attendance on that stuff, so I think we got a little frustrated with that, and then COVID sort of hit, and I don't think we've recovered from
Yeah.
that as far as them wanting to have that presence here.
Yeah,
But we talked to Jamie yesterday, and I mean, she was at the Future of Work event and spoke.
So
and-
she and
and
myself.
we're gonna,
have
start
regular
meeting again,
meetings.
so yeah.
okay, and
really
I'm
push
sorry,
for it.
I
Yeah.
pull him up SB, it could be SCED, it could be COG, it could be any, right? It's just it's our constant challenge, and just, like you said, even coming out of COVID, and like we did engage, have a great relationship with SCED on this housing piece,
Yeah.
but everybody is like just experiencing turnover and the lack of
Like
it.
their
I mean, there's so many
whole-
layers to
everybody
it.
at SCED
I just
left.
want to acknowledge, it's not just this organization and entity is doing a poor job. So I don't want to.
Well, I think too, I mean, and these are just my observations, but I fear that the EDC has become a catch-all in this community. So, the very first meeting we had, we discussed the Elevate Leadville model. Does that work for us? I don't know. And, in my conversations with Chris Romer, like, he doesn't think it'll work up here. Maybe it will, maybe he's wrong. I don't know. But I fear that the EDC has become a chamber and the EDC and community development. And just like all of these things, that makes it hard to
How do you
drive
feel like, I'm
forward.
curious, how do you feel like we've become a chamber?
Well, one, because we don't have one, and that, like, I feel like the function, sometimes like and then looking at your board, right? That, you have all of these business owners or community members as well on there that, but work on things that, in my mind, that typically a chamber would do.
So just so you know, we have less than 5% crossover between a chamber member and an EDC member. So just so you know, our roles are very, very different than a chamber. That's why we have different.
Well, I feel
EDCs
like
and
ideally
chambers.
if there
So
was
We're not doing chamber activities at all.
If there was a
So-
chamber, the chamber would be doing BRME? Is
No,
that accurate?
oh my God, no, that doesn't live in a chamber umbrella at all. That's in your EDC, 100%.
Well, like,
So-
I mean, again, like, that piece to me, like, that's just like, I feel like that should be ancillary to some of these other bigger things.
Sure. Don't, I mean.
Harder, longer term, not so sexy, not so
I know, I
fun.
work for an EDC,
cheer.
I interface with chambers, I'm very, very educated on the difference between the two missions. And I've spent 10 months being very careful about not being the catch-all. And, you know, Main Street, yeah, they're an economic driver, it makes sense. We've talked to our partners at OEDIT and they agreed, yeah, that kind of makes sense for you guys. Does the chamber make sense for us? No. We're gonna stay out of the weeds on that. We're not that organization. We're not gonna be, and we haven't been. So, you know, we don't compete with any of their membership. Very few of their members were members. There's cross over. I've done the analysis. So, you know, there's just no connectivity there. So, you know, I do, you know, you guys know I do volunteer a fair amount of my time doing other things, but yeah, I don't know that, you know, look, chambers, they can be great and they can be not great. Chambers typically fill the need of that business development networking. That's, you know, that's a byproduct of being part of the EDC, right? Because you get to go to board meetings and talk to people, but that's not in our mission. Our mission is not, ours is to support the business community, not create networking business development opportunities. That's a chamber function. That's why they have chambers. So it's a real missing piece for us. I'm not gonna lie. I've tried hard. I have created an actual solution to bring the chamber back and I was denied, just so you know, twice with 2 different people.
At the chamber?
So you know, I've done what I can. We need to stay
Multiple
focused on what we
Yeah,
do.
no, you
Could
don't need to
you-
do change.
Do you share that, do you have that on a piece of paper that you can share with us so we know, or what?
Like what you've approached the chamber with,
Yeah.
right?
Because I'd be interested in,
Yes, I
Just-
can. So
that'd be
the very
great.
first month of my employment as executive director, when I was still interim, I knew right away. I was ever in charge when Marla was in charge, you know? It's the first thing, one of the first calls I made was, and it was right to Tracy, and I said, look, if I got somebody to run it, the business after hours, because that's all the chamber is. Back home, the Beverly Hills Chamber and the LA Chamber, they're advocates, they're doing policy, they're in DC, they're at the Capitol. Our chamber's never gonna be that. So let's empower them to what they are good and what they will do, right? So it was all about business after hours. Okay, we went to BRNA, everybody wants it. Okay, it's not my role, it's not what we do, not my area of expertise, okay, but yeah. So I called and said, I have a person that will do it for almost free, and we can have business after hours. Easy peasy. You guys still have your designation, I know that. And it just, no, they don't want it to go anywhere, it's clear. So that's what happened. And yes, I do have things in writing. And yes, I do have had a plan, had a full agenda. We had the full, who was gonna be, we already did a bunch of outreach. That was in the first quarter of this year. So it died and it never, and it has been resurrected as of the last couple of weeks.
So then what's-
Do you,
I guess what's Tracy's role then on your board?
Well, it hasn't been a great role. It's been, you know,
She's absent.
She's
Board member,
absent.
yeah.
One of those,
We've
Chris,
had a lot of
do you
absences.
want, do you have any comments,
just
Chris?
gonna
Felt like you wanted to say something, Chris.
Okay, we're to get new people and right people, right? It's the right people on the team.
No, this is your forum to talk, when you're finished.
I mean, no, I'm done.
No, I was gonna say, and so, just because of the perspective I have and the many hats that I've worn in this community, one of which was as a board member and officer of the chamber back in the day, and also substantial work in Virginia with other chambers. I think everybody in this room knows that the chamber, even when it was semi-functional, was the cliche of pageants, parties, and parades.
Yeah.
That's all they did, because they didn't want to do anything else. That is not what a chamber does. And so we don't have a functional chamber. I've been here 9 years, we've never had a functional chamber. But that doesn't mean that what a chamber should be doing is economic development. And so they have, the EDC from day one has tried to fill that gap because there is a need for certain things. But taking the resources from the EDC to fill those gaps, I don't think is the appropriate use of EDC
Right,
resources,
right.
essentially.
I don't either.
And so it's one of those things where, you know, my perception was it should have been the Main Street program and chamber aligned for that type of stuff. They should have been invested in each other to advance that, because that's pretty much what
Yeah.
the focus is still on. And that hasn't happened. So I think the EDC's filled that gap. I don't think they should fill that gap anymore. Some of the things, if there's gonna be a chamber, it should be mandated that they do certain things. And part of it is a lot of the business training and all this stuff that a lot of time and effort goes into with the EDC should be done through the chamber. That relationship with the SBDC should be in part through the chamber. And so how we get to that part, I don't know. But I mean, and I haven't seen anything from the chamber or anything that's done. And I know that in the past, Tracy and Jill Hall, when they were the co-presidents or whatever of the chamber, begged the EDC to take it on. And the consensus was, no, because we don't want to inherit that dysfunctional pile of poop. Because that's pretty much what it was.
I was part of I was in the room during those conversations.
Yeah.
And I understand my role as an economic development person. It's very clear to me. And what they want, what their focus in and what their priority areas are not. However, there is connectivity, right? Because if the business community is asking, we want a business after hours. Darn it, we can't give that to you. But Tracy, you can do it. Why not? And helping to provide solutions, because if they do have a business after hours, it's back to that culture, right?
Yeah,
People-
sure.
That relationship.
Well,
building,
I don't know that we have to beat that dead horse, but right now, anymore. Sorry.
The chamber,
Yeah, the chamber.
I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for
I don't know.
advocacy for the businesses though, that we're missing out on with not having a functional chamber, that's for sure.
There absolutely is. And the other side of that goes back to what I was just saying is we're spending.
Yeah, I guess
resources for
you're
something they shouldn't
right.
be.
Like in
They
my
could be
head,
focused
after you
elsewhere.
say that too, and I know we've been trying to like parcel out, like if the EDC was the EDC and the chamber and Main Streets or something, that feels so much better to me.
Yes.
Of
yeah.
like what you're focusing on
Yes.
and not any.
Just say, we're
Great.
we're not focusing on
Like
any chamber
that.
activities. You do know that, right?
Well,
We're not.
not the traditional chamber activities here, but I think other types of chambers in the communities you came from may be very different from the communities in Virginia that I work with chambers on and serve on the boards and stuff, where a lot of the like BRNE stuff is done by chambers in those communities.
It depends if there's not a BRNE,
Yes.
like for the EDC, we had a business retention department.
Yeah.
So,
And
and
it just-
we did overlap with chambers,
There
but.
is, yeah.
Well, and that BRNE piece too, like just to. The point, sorry, Kayla.
No,
can
you're
you- That like, to me, like, yes, the development, creating that culture in any one business. Like we, in here on the first EDC thought pager, it's like there are in services and businesses that are closing, or like we're gonna lose, like the post office rural route, the septic. Like, to me, it feels like the EDC should have their arms around and be like know when those things might be coming down the pike, and have, like, how can we create a plan to keep those locally operating and functioning? Like the post office rural route carrier ending, and there's 5 people in town doing that for I don't know how long, and that's just gonna be contracted out to some other business. Dietrich trash. For those infrastructure pieces and development, we have some developing businesses. I think there is a new septic, thankfully, in town, but like things like that, to me, is like that EDC specific recruitment and development to keep and maintain and build those businesses that we've lost that are impacting our development opportunities. Looks like Kirsten has hand up.
I, like Chris, have watched over the last period of time, both the EDC and the Chamber and Main Street as they merged together or didn't merge together. And I respect greatly those ladies who were on the final bits of our chamber board. And the intention was to merge. As Chris knows, that was our historic past and what we planned on. I didn't know what that was going to look like until this year when the EDC merged with Main Street and we had a really functioning situation. And I agree that the chamber has a significant function within our town. I do think that the EDC, if they did have another board, just like Main Street has their own board, could support the chamber efforts that existed. That being said, like as you know, every single job in town is important, and being able to retain those positions is huge. And that's where the EDC does set itself apart from the chamber, but the chamber was a significant social organization for many of our businesses as well.
Yeah, it's a great point. Do we want to take 5 minutes before Nancy does her presentation?
I don't
Or what do
think
you wanna
we
do?
have time.
Yeah,
We're at the end of the
I'm s-
meeting.
Well, I'm so sorry, I have to go get kids.
Yeah, I have
because
to leave to go to
school
the,
day.
Yeah.
the Conservancy closing in Salida. But, maybe or schedule another, or, I don't know, reflect and chat and.
And you guys have had the,
The presentation?
yeah, you have it, right?
Mhm.
I mean, there's not, we weren't gonna go through slide by slide or anything, and, you know, don't have a ton to add to it. We were talking about time and getting into a presentation and
Oh,
stuff.
okay.
What
Do we want to schedule a follow-up
Yeah,
for a
for
follow-up?
that, just to
Okay.
keep kind of
Momentum
hash
going?
through, 'cause I
Yeah.
feel like we uncovered a lot of really important stuff and didn't quite
Yeah,
get
I'd really love,
clear next steps
Okay.
or.
yeah, I'd love to hear like how you might boil down like specific tasks, into goals on next year and maybe a couple of year projected priorities.
Or talk through the EDC strategic plan?
They have specific goals on there, so, you know, they're,
In the EDC, in the DCIs,
no, our strategic plan.
okay,
Yeah, you're not.
Sorry, I.
Jeff, I'll put your copy in your drawer.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So, let me give you this draft.
We'll make copies too, and I'll
Sure.
put Jeff one in his.
And I know these have been in, like, in my board follow-up emails, all these are in there too, in links, if
Okay.
you ever, you know, but I like a visual copy, and I know about you, but, so this is a full report from BCI, and this is what
What we've taken from.
what
the
we're
DCI report.
publishing, and these are the kind of, you know, and I hear what you're saying, you know, create specific activities around each one, and we've already done that, which is explained in our report here. So I highly encourage you guys, if you haven't done it already, really review that report, because it really does tell a story about how our activities are tying back to these types of goals.
I think I will look, but I think I need generally more specificity of like actionable items and just maybe think about that as you think about like engaging the board too, but I will do my homework. And,
Okay, so next steps, so we have these, Nancy has them in links, we have the presentation.
and like
So
looking
let's
at our
go-
notes
Let's,
too.
and then we've given them our notes. Let's,
I'm looking at calendars.
yeah,
What are we looking at, guys?
what does it look like for next week? Do you know yet? Are you out next week anytime? There's-
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, I'm out of town, at a conference, Thursday, Friday.
Thursday, Friday next week, you're at a conference?
Yeah,
The 3rd and 4th?
yeah.
Okay, so Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday
Yeah.
next week, okay. Do we have
Yeah, I
our
can't,
meeting?
it's not, it's blank.
Are you guys like on a shared master calendar?
We
Yeah,
do, yeah,
we could do like Wednesday at 1. Because we don't have anything on Wednesday.
I'm down with that. Wait a
I won't be
minute.
able to.
Oh, no, we have to have Jason, so.
We can do it the week after too, Nancy. We can go to the week of the 8th.
Okay.
Are you here all week on the 8th?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're posting. Oh my gosh. What?
Tim's the colors have changed, so now I'm like, don't know whose
Don't
calendar
you-
is
don't
what, and
you
I don't
hate,
know
like,
why
the
they
email?
changed.
Is really shitty like every day.
Tuesday, if you have a work session scheduled, I think at 1 already.
Monday's open too. From like 12 to 2.
What about next Monday, the
I can do
31st?
Mondays.
Rather do it sooner the better. So we
The
can kind
31st we have a huge budget work session
Um,
at 1.
Nothing Wednesday, the 2nd?
I'm working.
You're not gonna be here?
I work Tuesday, Wednesday at the store.
Um,
And you're gone Thursday and Friday, huh, Nancy?
you know what, I can do morning. I can do something in the morning and.
On Thursday?
Yeah, the